We continue now at the top of Daf Ayin Vav Amud Aleph and Meseches Menachos. This is Menachos Daf 76a. The Mishnah says, Kol ha-menachos te'unos shlosh meos shifa. All menachos, all mincha offerings require 300 rubbings, v'chamesh meos be'ita, and 500 poundings. And the Mishnah continues, Shifa uve'ita bechitin. The rubbings and the poundings, they apply to wheat. Rabbi Yossi, Amar by Rabbi Yossi says, bevotzek, they apply to the dough. And the Mishnah continues, Kol ha-menachos bos eser. All menachos, they come in groups of 10 loaves. Chutz mi lechem haponim, with the exception of the lechem haponim, that's the weekly bread. V'chavise kohen gadol, and also the chavise kohen gadol. Again, that is the mincha brought by the kohen gadol, half in the morning, half in the afternoon. Shehem bos shteim esrei, those come in groups of 12 loaves. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, these are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir says, Kulam bos shteim esrei, they all come as 12. Chutz me chalos toda unaziros, except for the chalos toda, the loaves of the toda, and the nazir, shehein bos eser, that those come in groups of 10. And Rashi Ksav explains, shifa, again, and that refers to the rubbings, shemeshavshef hachitin ben yadav, it means between his hands, he rubs the wheat, sheteinocha klipa lahasher, that way the husk is able to come off, oh habatzek, or could be the dough, kadesh yeinah, that it should be good dough, and then be'ita, again, be'ita refers to the poundings, boet, bo'ove egrof, that's with a fist. Kederech hagabolim, like those who need the dough, or ove pasiyado, hasamach lizroa, or it could be pasiyado, the area that's near the zroa, and that would refer to the heel of the palm. And finally, Rashi says, lishnachrin, another understanding, be'ita beregel, it's actually kicking it or pounding it with the foot. And the Gemara says, Tana was taught in a brisa, Shaf achas boet shtayim, he rubs once, he pounds twice. Shaf shtayim boet shalosh, he rubs twice, he pounds 3 times. And the idea is that this sequence is carried out 100 times, so it ends up being 300 rubbings and the 500 poundings that are mentioned in the Mishnah. And the Gemara continues, Boy Rabbi Yirmiyah asks the following question, Amtuye va'asuye, when it comes to going back and forth, let's say you have a rolling of it back and forth, so is that chad, is that considered like one? That's one possibility. O Dilmor, maybe Amtuye va'asuye trey, or maybe when one rolls it back and forth, that's considered to be 2 rubbings. Is it considered to be 1 rubbing or 2 rubbings? What is that considered? And the Gemara says, Teiku. The Gemara leaves that as a question. And the Gemara continues at the 2 dots. Again, the Mishnah said, Shifa uve'ita bechitin, with regards to the rubbings and the poundings, that's when it's wheat. And Rabbi Yossi Omer bebotzik, Rabbi Yossi says that actually happens when it is dough. And the Gemara says, Iboilhu, they had the following question, bebotzik velo bechitin, what exactly is Rabbi Yossi saying? Is he saying it takes place when it's dough and not when it's the state of wheat? Odilma af bebotzik, or maybe what he means is even when it is dough, this takes place. And the Gemara continues, Tashma, come in here the following proof, that Tanya, as we learned in a brisa, Shifa uve'ita bechitin, again, the rubbing and the pounding, they apply to wheat. Rabbi Yossi Omer, and Rabbi Yossi says, Shifa uve'ita bebotzek, it says again that the rubbing and the pounding applies when it's dough, and that all implies, this brisa in its entirety implies, that Rabbi Yossi is saying it is only when it is dough and not when it is wheat. And the Gemara continues at the 2 dots. Again, the Mishnah said, Kol ha-menachos bos shtei mesrei, all the mincha offerings, they're brought in groups of 10 loaves, except for the lechem haponim and the chavitim, and those are brought in groups of 12. And the Gemara says, lechem haponim, with regards to the lechem haponim, again, the lechem haponim being an exception, so behed yaksiv, that's an explicit pasuk. The pasuk says that it's brought as 12. Ksiv Bey, there's an explicit pasuk over there. Chavise kohen gadol, now with regards to the chavise kohen gadol, the mincha brought by the kohen gadol, asya chuka milechem haponim, there we have a gzeira shava. It's a gzeira shava of chuka, it says chuka by both, and therefore we learn from the lechem haponim. And the Gemara continues and asks, Kol ha-menachos debos eser manolim, the fact that all menachos, they come in groups of 10, from where do we know that? The Gemara says, Gomar milachmei toda, that we learn from the lachmei toda. Lachmei toda is 40 loaves, but it's 4 types of loaves, and therefore essentially it's groups of 10 loaves. Malahalon eser, just like over there it's 10, Avkan eser, so too over here, it's groups of 10. But the Gemara continues and asks, V'leilef milechem haponim, but why not learn out from the lechem haponim? We should learn out malahalan shtei mesrei, just like over there it's 12, afkan shtei mesrei, so too over here it's 12. And the Gemara says, Mistabra, it makes sense to say, Milachmei Toda Havalei Lamelef, that we should learn from Lachmei Toda and not the Lechem Aponim. And what is the reason to learn from Lachmei Toda? Because Lachmei Toda has the following things in common. Number one, Shekain Yachin. Number one, this is brought by an individual. Again, we're learning over here the other Menachos from the Lachmei Toda because these are individual Menachos. And HaMisnadev also, it's a situation of Misnadev. It means that they're brought by one who donates. And Shemen also, with regards to oil, they both contain oil. And Nifsal, it means they become disqualified if they're left overnight. And Shalo b'Shabbos, these are not offered on the Shabbos. The communal offerings would be offered on the Shabbos. V'Shalo b'Tumah, these are not offered in a state of Tumah. And so therefore, again, it makes sense to learn Menachos from the Lachmei Toda. But the Gemara continues and asks, Adarab, on the contrary, Melechem Aponim, Havalei Lamelef, we should actually learn from the Lechem Aponim. It has the following things in common. Shekain Hekdesh, number one, they are holy. What that means is that they are of most holy. They're in the category of Kodesh Kadoshim. Toda is considered in the category of Kodshim Kalim. Ulavona, and also they require Lavona, frankincense, and Matzah, they are baked. They are made out of Matzah. When you're learning from the Korban Toda has some that are Chametz. And furthermore, V'etzem also, each is brought on its own for its own sake. In other words, when you're learning from the Lechem Aponim, that's brought on its own. The Lachmei Toda accompany the Korban Toda. And so therefore, why don't we learn from the Lechem Aponim? And the Gemara continues and answers, Hanoch Nefishan, the similarities are more numerous with regards to the breads of the Toda, and so therefore it makes sense to learn from the Toda, the Lachmei Toda, and not from the Lechem Aponim. And the Gemara continues and asks, now if we hold that something that is learned through a Gzeira Shava can then be used to teach through a binyanav is essentially a mamotzino, just like we find over here, so too over here. So if we're going to say that that is the case, we can ask as follows. Neilif mechavise Kohen Gadol, then we should be able to learn from the Chavise Kohen Gadol, the mincha of the Kohen Gadol. We should say as follows, Malahalon Shtei Mesrei, just like over there it is 12 loaves. Afkan Shtei Mesrei, so too over here, it should be 12 loaves. Again, with regards to the Chavise Kohen Gadol, we said above that the Chavise Kohen Gadol are actually derived from a Gzeira Shava of Chuka. Again, that's the Chavise Kohen Gadol learned from the Lechem Aponim. And so the Gemara now is asking, why don't we then learn from the Chavise Kohen Gadol to other Menachos? We should say again, Malahalon Shtei Mesrei, Afkan Shtei Mesrei, just like over there it's 12, so too over here it's 12. And the Gemara continues and answers, Mistabra, again it makes sense, Milachmei Toda Havalei Lamelef, we really should learn from Lachmei Toda. Shekain Hediot, again this is the Lachmei Toda is brought by a regular individual. Shehis Nadev, it is something that is donated. Chatzoin, these are karbonos that are not brought in halves, as opposed to Chavise Kohen Gadol, which is half in the morning and half in the afternoon. And then Lepigul, in terms of Pigul, they're subject to the laws of Pigul. And Shalo b'Shabbos v'Shalo b'Tumah. And also, again, they are not offered on Shabbos, they are not offered in Tumah, and so therefore, again, we should learn from the Lachmei Toda. But the Gemara continues, Adrab, in the contrary, Chavise Kohen Gadol Havalei Lamelef, we should learn from Chavise Kohen Gadol, because it has the following things in common. Number one, Shekain Isaron, it contains an Isaron, that's the amount of flour that is contained, and Kli also, they are sanctified in a vessel, and also Hektish, again, they are of the most holy, they're in the category of Kodshei Kodshim and not Kodshim Kalim. Ulavona means they contain frankincense, Matzah means they are made of matzah, V'etzah means, again, that it comes on its own, it comes for its own sake, it's not accompanying something like the Korban Toda. Hagosha means there's a halach of Hagosha, it has to be brought near the Mizbeach. And finally, V'ishim, that refers to the fact that it's put onto the fires of the altar. And again, so therefore it makes sense to learn from the Chavise Kohen Gadol that is not true by the Lachmei Toda. And furthermore, the Gemara says, V'hani Nefishan, and actually what we just listed is actually more numerous. And so therefore, again, we should really learn from the Chavise Kohen Gadol. And the Gemara says to that, Hedyot me Hedyot adifle. It's better to learn a Hedyot from a Hedyot, a carbon that's brought by a commoner, from a carbon that is brought from a commoner. And the Gemara continues again, the Mishnah recorded the opinion of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir Omer, Rabbi Meir says, Kulan Bo Shtei Mesrei, they all come in groups of 12, with the exception of the Toda and the Nazirus, otherwise groups of 12. And the Gemara says, Ma'ai Kosavar, what exactly does Rabbi Meir hold? And the Gemara continues and explains, Isvirole, if Rabbi Meir holds the Davar Halamid B'Gzeira Shava Choser Malamid B'Binyanav, that's something that is learned through a Gzeira Shava is able to teach through a binyan av, so then his source can be the Chavise Kohen Gadol. Yolif me Chavise de Kohen Gadol. He can learn from the Chavise de Kohen Gadol. That's where he's going to learn out 12. Again, Dahani Nefishim, because those similarities were more numerous, as we just said above. Now, if he holds the Davar Halamed B'Gzera Shava Eino Chozer Malabid B'Vinyan Av, that something learned through Gzera Shava cannot teach through a Binyan Av, so he can't learn from Chavise Kohen Gadol, so then Yolif mi Lechem Aponim, then he can learn from Lechem Aponim, and to that the Gemara explains, Hektish me Hektish Adif Lei, the reason why he would learn from Lechem Aponim as opposed to the Toda is because, again, Hektish me Hektish, it's better to learn something that is the most holy, that's Kachei Kachim from Kachei Kachim, as opposed to Kachim Kalim, as opposed to the Carbon Toda, which is Kachim Kalim. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah brought the continuation of Rabbi Meir's statement, Chutz mi Lachmei Toda Nezirus, with the exception of the Lachmei Toda and Nezirus, Shehein Bos Eser Eser, those come in groups of 10. And the Gemara says, Lachmei Toda, with regards to Lachmei Toda, Behed Yuksibahu, that's an explicit pasuk, that it's 10 loaves, again it's 40 loaves, but each type of loaf is a group of 10. And Nazirus, what about with regards to Nazirus? Diyamar Mar, that's because the master said, it says by the Toda, it says Shalomov, it says the word Shlomov over there, and that's an inclusion, L'Rabos Shalmei Nazir, that comes to include the Shlomim of Nazir in the laws of Toda. And so therefore we understand, again, just like by the Lachmei Toda, it's groups of 10, so too with regards to the Shalmei Nazir, it's going to be groups of 10. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Tuvi Bar Kisna, Amar Shmuel. Rav Tuvi Bar Kisna says that Shmuel says, Lachmei Toda shafon arba chalos. Let's say you have Lachmei Toda and the person only brought 4 loaves. He didn't bring the 40 loaves, he brought one of each type. So he does fulfill his obligation. But the Gemara asks, but don't we need 40 loaves? The Gemara says, Le mitzvah, that's just a mitzvah lechatchila, but again, it's still going to be valid if it's brought with 4 loaves. But the Gemara continues and asks, but there has to be a truma. That refers to the fact that when a person brings the Lachmei Toda, there has to be something that is separated, and that which is separated goes to the Kohen, and the rest is eaten by the owner. So if you only bring 4 chalos, how do you separate anything for the Kohen? And the Gemara says, now if you're going to say, demafresh bikol chada v'chada, that he just separates from each loaf, he takes a little piece, and he gives that to the Kohen, but that's problematic because echad amar achmana, the pasuk says 1, and what does that mean? Shelo yitol paras. It means to say that one should not take a broken loaf as the truma, it has to be a whole one, and so what is going to be the solution in this situation? And the Gemara continues and essentially qualifies what Shmuel said, the afreshinu belisha, what's going to have to happen over here is that he's going to separate the truma in the kneading stage while it was still dough before it was baked, so he removes about 1/10, and that's going to be the truma in this situation. And the Gemara continues, Meisvei, we have a question on Shmuel from the following brisa. The brisa says, Kol ha-menachos sheriba b'midas chalos, on all of the mincha offerings, if the number of loaves was increased, it was more than it was supposed to be, o shemiat b'midas chalosan, or let's say it was too few in terms of the amount of loaves, so kasheros, it's still going to be kosher. Chutz milechem aponim v'chavise kohen gadol, V'lachmei Toda u'Nazirus, with the exception of the Lechem Aponim, the Chavise Kohen Gadol, Lachmei Toda and Nazirus, there it's going to be problematic if it's not the right number. And the Gemara continues and answers who he, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Ayin Vav Amid Beis.